My name is Nima Shrini, and I'm a student graduating at FGCU this summer of 2020. I'm earning my bachelor's in biology. I went into biology originally as it was sort of an all-encompassing major for most pre-meds. If I had to do it over again, though, there would be a strong chance I would have been into bio or chemical engineering. My past interest was in pre-medicine with a focus in neurosurgery, or what you would commonly know as a brain surgeon. As I went through school, I started developing new interests. Specifically, I was somebody interested in creating things. Wouldn't it be awesome to have the ability to create medicine? It's the very thing that helps our bodies against various diseases. So I realized if I had such an interest in medicine, and I wanted to make things, why not go into pharmacology? This is exactly what pharmacology is. It is the study of medicine that is concerned with the uses, effects, and the mode of action of the medication. Pharmacologists can branch into many fields, and as of currently, I have an interest in medicinal chemistry, which will allow me to design the medication, but as things change, I might find myself interested in another subdivision of pharmacology. This is because pharmacology encompasses so many things. I wanted to introduce everyone to a discipline of science that isn't very well known, and when we think medicine, we think of pharmacists and doctors, but rarely the scientists that are behind the scenes creating the very tools that pharmacists and doctors use to save lives. So to understand pharmacology is to understand a variety of sciences because pharmacology takes bits and pieces of multiple sciences to basically be what it is. Pharmacology isn't as simple as you make the medication, it goes in the body, the end. There's a lot of stuff behind pharmacology. And a couple of classes that you can actually take in college that can relate directly to pharmacology are as shown below the word pharmacology. So cell biology, organic chemistry, biochemistry, and physiology. These are a couple of classes that I think really make up the core of what pharmacology is. And then pharmacology itself can be subdivided into two other things that we will talk about shortly. But first, let me mention to you guys what cell biology, organic chemistry, biochemistry, and physiology can allow you to do to understand pharmacology. So cell biology is important to pharmacology, and I will explain why. So to start to understand what is cell biology, well, it's pretty much in the name. The cell biology is pretty much the study of cells. What is a cell made up of? What does a cell do? And why the heck do we care about cells? Well, our body is made up of cells, and those cells make our tissues, and our tissues make our organs. So it's very important that cells should be functioning correctly, and to understand what goes wrong in a cell is important, and also to understand what a medication can do to cells is also important. Because if you look to the picture on the left, when there is a chemical or a medication that you take, well, these can bind onto your cells. And when they bind onto your cells, that can change what the cell does. So to understand cell biology is to understand how medication can affect the cell. So that is why cell biology is important to understand. So next is actually what I would consider my favorite class. It's a class that I was actually teaching as a teacher's assistant at FGCU, and this is organic chemistry, what would be considered pretty infamous for how tough it is on pre-med students. But people think that it doesn't correlate into medicine, but it's pretty important when considering medication. Now, a doctor would never need to use this knowledge, but a pharmacologist could use organic chemistry knowledge, especially a pharmacologist that's interested in medicinal chemistry. Now, a pharmacologist can go into many routes, and if one wanted to actually design the medication, you would want to have a pretty good background in organic chemistry because organic chemistry is the synthesis of carbon-containing compounds, which is most of our medication. So to understand organic chemistry is to actually understand the structure of the medication and how to actually make that medication. How do you synthesize the medication? And it's interesting because at FGCU, we made an antidepressant using organic chemistry. So we learned a technique that medicinal chemists would use. And this is why I would consider organic chemistry to be one of the backbone classes in college that would be pretty important for pharmacology. So, biochemistry, and why is it so important? Well, I say biochemistry is extremely important for anybody getting into any science that has to do with anything that's even alive. If you have a living being, you can understand that living being using biochemistry. So what is biochemistry? Well, it's understanding what is going on inside of a living being using chemistry. Now, I'm not going to explain everything because biochemistry is a huge, and I mean a huge field, encompassing so many different ideas, so many different things, but I'm going to explain it to you for, say, somebody like me who wants to become a pharmacologist, and why it could be important for me. It's important for me because if we can understand what's going on in the body, we can also understand what's going wrong in the body. If we can understand what's going wrong, well then I can get an idea of the kind of medication I like to create. Because if I can pinpoint the chemistry that's going wrong, I can figure out how to reverse that. And that's why biochemistry is important in a nutshell. But biochemistry, just as a tangent, is important in understanding, for instance, how do you even process food? When you eat food, how do you even get the energy from that? Well, there's a biochemical pathway that explains that for you. But also, biochemistry is fascinating because you can even understand how do we make humans live longer? And I would say that's my current interest of research is, can I understand the biochemistry of aging? And if I do understand that biochemistry of aging, is there a medication that I can make that could maybe reverse that process or help lesser that process? And that's why I find biochemistry to be a very fascinating field, because I think biochemistry is the future for medicine in general. So if you really like medicine, not just for a pharmacologist, but for somebody that likes doctors, pharmacists, any field like that, I would definitely go into biochemistry. Physiology is the last science that I would like to talk about that is important for pharmacology. What is physiology? Well, physiology is the science of understanding how the systems in your body works. So we know that we have cells, and these cells make up tissues, and these tissues make up your organs, and your organs then make up the organ system in your body. And now, what are these systems? Well, you have a cardiovascular system that deals with your heart. You have a muscular system that deals with your muscles. You have an endocrine system, which deals with hormones. And you have various other systems. And if you're going to be somebody that is going to make medication, then you're going to need to understand how all of these systems work. Because if you understand how a system works, it's just like biochemistry. You can understand how something can go wrong. If you understand all the bits and pieces of a puzzle, then you can have pieces of puzzles that you can put back into the puzzle to recreate it again. If there's pieces that are missing, you want to figure out how to get that piece back into the puzzle. And that's why it's important to know these sciences that really tell you how things work. And physiology is no exception. So I would say that this science is not only important for pharmacology, but if you wanted to be a doctor, I would say take a physiology class when you're in college. It teaches you a lot. So next, we're going to talk about pharmacology now. Now we're actually going to get into what pharmacology is, the bread and butter of pharmacology, which is two subdivisions that I like to talk about: pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. First, let's talk about pharmacokinetics. I think it's first best to actually split the word up: pharmaco and kinetics. So pharmaco relates to pharmaceuticals, and we know that pharmaceuticals are medicine. And then kinetics means movement. So here we're talking about medicine movement. So we'd like to understand how the medication actually moves throughout our body, from when we take it, to when it gets distributed through our body, to when it gets metabolized in our body, and to when it actually leaves our body. To understand all of these processes is to understand pharmacokinetics. Next is pharmacodynamics. Pharmacodynamic, so pharmaco relating to pharmaceuticals, which as we said relates to medicine, and dynamics relating to change. So, the change with medicine. How is the medicine changing your body at a molecular, physiological, or biochemical level? Is to understand pharmacodynamics. And this is basically the bread and butter of pharmacology. If you're really interested in understanding how medication actually affects your body, well, pharmacodynamics is what's going to explain it to you, because pharmacodynamics is involved with the actual action of the medication. So that's what I am mostly interested in, actually, is pharmacodynamics. That is a field that I am definitely going to spend a lot of time in. That and medicinal chemistry. So there is a rough idea of what pharmacology is. Now, if you are interested in becoming a doctor, I would also take an interest just in pharmacology in general, because at medical school, you're going to be taking a pharmacology class. So now that we've talked about pharmacology, we've talked about how it is as a science, what can you expect out as a career? What are the career paths of somebody who is to get a master's or a PhD in pharmacology? That's what we'll be talking about on the next slide. So to end it all, let's talk about career choices. Now, all of these careers are fantastic careers, and there's even more careers that you could get as a pharmacologist, because pharmacology is a very, very broad field with a lot of things that encompass it. So I would say it's a very good choice. But here are some career choices that I've thought about and career choices that you might think about. So we have researcher/professor, because you can work in a university as a professor teaching, say, a pharmacology class or a chemistry class or a biochemistry class, and while you're doing all of that, you have your research that you can do as well. Next is biomedical scientist. So this is a scientist working in a company, figuring out how to cure a biological disease. Then we have medicinal chemist. These are chemists who basically synthesize and make the medication. Then we have pharmacologists. Pharmacologists are the ones that try to understand how the medication works, how the medication is metabolized, how it's excreted, all of that kind of information. A pharmacologist can give that to you. Next, we have medical liaison. Well, what is this? Well, you're a pharmacologist, or you have a pharmacology degree, which means that you have a lot of knowledge about medicine, and a pharmaceutical company might want to have their medication described to a doctor that a doctor may use. So basically, this is a bridge between doctors and the pharmaceutical company. The pharmaceutical company can send out a liaison to explain to the doctor how the medication works and basically teach the doctor on what the medication is. Now, the last one is a toxicologist. Now, there's a lot of degrees called master's or PhD in molecular pharmacology and toxicology. So you could also go the toxicology route. What is toxicology? Well, when we talk about medication, we're typically talking about medication as therapeutic, as something that's going to heal. Now, toxicologists deal with the other side. What about if medication or chemicals were to cause toxic effects? And we want to understand those toxic effects, so we can know when something becomes toxic. That's what a toxicologist does. Now, these are all of the options that I've considered, and these are options you can consider, but as I have explained, there is many and many more options. Now, many people want to be doctors, many people want to go into the medical field. Now, a lot of people don't actually know about pharmacologists, so here is a basic view on pharmacology, and if you're interested, I would definitely check it out, because if you like medicine and you've always wanted to, in a sense, help the world out, do something for the world, you're always interested in making things, you're interested in being a scientist, I would say this is a great choice. And this is a choice that I took over becoming a doctor. So that is my presentation on pharmacology. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new. And I'm going to go now and make some science-based lectures on chemistry, biochemistry, and many other topics that you guys might be interested in. Thank you for watching.